This is the ThinkTank Helipak. It's an FPV backpack that comes in at a $199 price point, and it's intended for travel around the world. Like the name implies, it's a helipack. I previously had the offering from LowPro, which is the BPX Guard 2 or whatever it's called, and I switched up to this bag for a number of reasons, paramount of which being the workflow of the bag. When I first got this bag, I was absolutely blown away by how well it fit all of my stuff and actually worked for me and made my life easier, not more difficult. I've said this in the past, and I'll say it over and over again. If I didn't have this bag or a bag like this, I would not be able to do half as much as I normally do. This is the bag I work out of as well as travel with. And as you're looking inside, you can see that all of my instruments are in the bag. And like I said, the only thing that's not in this bag is my soldering iron. Everything else stays inside the bag permanently. I build all my quads out of the bag. So what you're looking at on the inside is what I mean by the amazing workflow that this bag has, and it has a bunch of dirt and stuff inside too. So you can see all my instruments are on the outside of the bag. They're all like lined up on the outside. Everything that I use that I normally use, and all the little spare tiny instruments are in these little bags up here, which I don't really use too often. And the most distinctive feature that helped me realize the workflow of this bag is something that's so simple but works so well. It's these walls, these dividers, as you can see. They Velcro to the sides of the wall, and you can reposition them however you like. And the way I have decided to do it is to take advantage of the wall height of the bag. It's got really, it has structure to the walls, so you can file all your gear in vertically. And even though I'm really lazy and I just kind of throw my quads in there, by the way, quads on the inside, that's definitely a spoiling feature of the bag. You can take the props off and file them in vertically. I've traveled before with 8 quads on the inside of my bag. 8 full-size 5-inch quads filed in vertically on the inside of the bag, none on the outside. Now I know I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this bag where most people are probably still using cardboard boxes, and I still use cardboard boxes because they're just so functional to carry your stuff in when you're constantly building and rebuilding and moving stuff around. It's just easy to just throw everything in the box and go. And essentially this is what I have here, is a cardboard box on the inside. But like I said, I've always wanted to offer another bag that has similar functionality on a cheaper scale, because $200 is a little bit much for a bag. So I have talked to a number of bag manufacturers in the attempt at trying to even figure out how I might be able to put this special bag together. And the first company I went to was ThinkTank themselves. I told them, hey, look, I love your bag, I love the quality, I love the workflow. Let's get rid of everything that costs a lot of money, and we don't really need to put our quads on the inside. Let's make it smaller, and let's try to make something that's a reasonable cost that people will buy. $70, $80, $100. That's going to be easier to swallow, and it's going to give people the same kind of incredible benefits that I have been enjoying for the past several months, which is when I started talking to them about it. Through this journey of talking to these manufacturers, I've learned quite a lot about manufacturing of soft goods, as they call them. These bags actually cost a lot of money to make, and one of the main costs of this bag, believe it or not, is the center divider. Apparently the foam that's in this center divider and the foam that are in the walls and the material that's used to line them is really expensive. Additionally, the zippers are really expensive. The stitching and the manpower to make them is really expensive. They're not the cheapest items to make. Now, I personally love a good value. And I've been recently testing the cheap motors. I mean, I've always tested cheap motors. I always like stuff that is of value. That's why my frames aren't extremely expensive. That's why the flight controller I made is one of the cheapest flight controllers on the market, and the new one is, again, not drastically expensive. So I personally view a good bag as something that will bring people out, will make them do this stuff more and get more people involved. I'm always looking for an alternative option to recommend to tell other people, because I have so many people asking me, and when I tell them, you know, get this bag, it's $199, but it's really going to change the way you do FPV, it's really a hard thing for them to swallow. Fast forward to 3 years later, and in comes Realacc or Racer Store or one of these no-name brands or super cheap brands that try to copy everything. And I have to say, they didn't do an awful job copying here, but let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. So first and foremost, the bag setup is fine. I mean, yeah, the details are not perfect. Like, nothing is excellent, but I'm not looking at excellence. I'm looking at something that I can recommend and people can use, and it'll actually be functional for people. So the bag opens up from the bag, which I don't know if I'm a fan of or not. It doesn't matter. But look, when you open the bag and you look at the inside, it has very much a similar structure, although it doesn't really stay together the same way. But it has, oh, this is kind of embarrassing for them, but it has sort of a similar structure, which, if you really put some work into it, it will stay together. And they have gotten the wall height correct, so I can file my gear in there the way I like. The size is also smaller than the ThinkTank Helipak, so it's the right size. And the walls, well, they could use a little bit more rigidity, but they're not terrible. These center dividers, which were previously the most expensive thing about the ThinkTank bag, yeah, they feel cheaper, but they don't feel all that much cheaper. They're just kind of normal. They're adequate. I wouldn't expect them to, you know, really cause problems aside from the Velcro ability of the sides. And they have these little bands for you to put your tools and instruments in. Whatever it is, the layout is actually pretty good. Where the bag fails is in the really fine details. So I don't really care about the straps or the clips or any of this stuff very much. The zipper is the worst part of this bag. If you take a close look, the teeth are already broken, and I've only opened and closed the bag 3 times. There's no doubt in my mind that this zipper will be the first thing to go on this bag. And once you lose the zipper, the bag is essentially useless. The zipper is completely made of plastic, the teeth are all plastic, the stitching is poor, and it's so sad because the bag could have been potentially useful aside from the zipper. Now, not everything else is really up to par and really perfect, but it's also not awful. The general materials that have been used to make the bag are of absolutely minimum acceptable standard, and I wouldn't really expect anybody to use this pouch for more than just the main pouch, because the stuff on the inside is essentially made of paper. In addition to that, the bag is actually not cheap. It's $60-something. While I do understand that $199 is a difficult price to swallow, and $60-something is a much more tolerable price, I can't recommend the Realacc bag to anybody at all due to the very, very low quality zippers. What's the point of the bag if the zippers don't even work? If you haven't realized yet, I highly recommend the ThinkTank Helipak above all because of its workflow and how easy it makes my life with FPV. There are a number of other FPV bag products on the market, and I think actually the Strix bag is really cheap, and I think it's the most popular bag on the market right now. And it's not bad, it's just that it doesn't have the same structure and the ability to file your instruments and ability to reach everything at every single time that the ThinkTank Helipak has. The whole point of this video was to tell you, don't go for the super cheap stuff. If you're not willing to dish out the money for something that's quality and good and will actually last you and work for you rather than you'll have to make it work for you, stick with the cardboard box you have or the bags you have. I'm not trying to be condescending or anything. Cardboard boxes are really, really useful for FPV. They have great structure, they have great ability to access everything you need, and they're functional, and they're pretty much free. So I'm totally serious about the cardboard box thing, and I've actually upgraded to a plastic United States Postal. Or if you don't like cardboard, just keep the bag that you already have, or use an old bag because you know it's going to work for you, an old JanSport, an old something, or get the Strix bag because it's cheap and you can make it functional for you. that's all. I'm going to continue talking to bag manufacturers about hopefully making a kind of a smaller ThinkTank Helipak, maybe, and something that's not the best quality, but not the worst quality, and will actually work for you, but I don't know if that's actually going to work out. We'll see, but here's something that everybody should have in their bag.